Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. I used to think the scariest things in life were student debt and unemployment. 3 months of living on ramen noodles, dodging my landlord's calls, and watching my bank account drain like a bathtub with a missing plug had taught me desperation, but I hadn't even scratched the surface of what that word really meant. The email arrived at 3:17 a.m., another sleepless night of job hunting, my laptop screen casting a sickly blue glow over my cramped studio. Every job listing wanted 5 years of experience for an entry-level position. My environmental science degree felt about as useful as a paper umbrella in a hurricane. Then I saw it. Immediate opening, Everglades boat tour guide. $95 an hour. Housing included. No prior experience required. Start tomorrow. Contact for details. I read it over and over, searching for the catch. Jobs like this didn't just appear, especially not when my bank account was hovering at $472.03, and my fridge contained half a bottle of ketchup and a yogurt old enough to have voting rights. But desperation makes red flags look like welcome banners. I sent my application at 3:22 a.m. The response came at 3:23 a.m. Position is yours. Bus ticket attached. Arrive tomorrow at RP station. Someone will meet you. I should have questioned why they didn't ask for references. Why no interview? Why they replied instantly, like they'd been waiting, but all I saw was a way out. The Greyhound ride to Florida was 18 hours of crying babies, body odor, and a creeping sense that I was making a mistake. I watched through smeared windows as strip malls gave way to wilderness, highways disappearing into an endless sprawl of tangled green. The air grew thick enough to chew. AP, Florida, wasn't a town. It was a place that existed between other places. A single gas station with half its letters missing. A diner that hadn't seen fresh paint since Kennedy was president. The Everglades, pressed in from all sides. An endless maze of water and shadow stretching to the horizon like nature's version of an Escher painting. The bus wheezed to a stop. I stepped off, and the heat hit me like a wet slap. My shirt stuck to my back in seconds. A palmetto bug the size of my thumb scuttled across my foot. Welcome to Florida. The gas station's bell chimed as I pushed open the door, seeking the sweet salvation of air conditioning. Behind the counter sat an elderly woman with hair as white as cotton. She barely looked up from her crossword. Her name tag was too faded to read. "You must be the new tour guide," she said. Not a question. Her voice was slow, smooth, and carried the weight of knowing things. I wiped sweat from my forehead, already regretting my long-sleeve shirt. Yeah, that obvious?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We don't get many newcomers, especially ones carrying everything they own in a duffel bag." I shifted my grip on the strap. Something about the way she watched me made my stomach knot. "You're headed to Marty's dock," she said. I nodded, pulling out my phone to check the directions I'd been sent. "Won't get any signal out here." She tapped her pen against the counter. 2 miles that way." She pointed east. "Follow the road until you hit water. Can't miss it." She hesitated. Just for a second. "You know anything about the Glades, boy?" "Environmental science major," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Did my thesis on wetland ecosystems. Studied the impact of climate change on..." She made a noise somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Books don't tell you everything." There was something in her voice that made my skin prickle. "The Glades got their own rules. Best learn them quick." I grabbed a bottle of water and some beef jerky, more out of politeness than hunger. As I turned to leave, she called out one last time. "Hey, college boy." I looked back. "When Marty gives you instructions, you listen." Her gaze was steady, unreadable. "And for God's sake, don't go wandering after dark. The rules. Follow them. All of them. No matter what." The walk to the dock was like wading through soup. The air pressed against me, thick and wet, making every step feel like dragging myself through molasses. Even the insects seemed too heat-stunned to care. their lazy buzzing filling the air like the hum of something vast and patient. By the time I reached the dock, my shirt was soaked through, and I had drained half my water. The dock was old, weathered, wood sun-bleached to grey, planks worn soft under the weight of time. A few of them had been replaced recently, their colour just a little too fresh, too new. Like someone had tried to cover up something they didn't want remembered. Several airboats bobbed in the sluggish current, their metal fans catching the brutal Florida sun, gleaming like teeth. And then there was Marty. He looked exactly like the kind of man you'd expect to have spent a lifetime in the Everglades. Skin like old leather, a permanent squint carved deep into his face, and a cigarette that looked surgically attached to his lower lip. He stood at the edge of the dock, arms crossed, watching me with the kind of expression you give a dog you aren't sure is house-trained. "Ben?" he asked, voice like gravel caught in a garbage disposal. "Yes, sir. Got your email about the job." He grunted, taking a long drag from his cigarette. The smoke curled around his head like a halo made of swamp fog. "You're early. Good. Means you might actually listen." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were worn soft, like old money passed through too many hands. The creases were deep, nearly splitting the fragile surface in places. Water stains darkened the corners, but the ink, thick, dark, written in careful strokes, remained clear. Marty held it just out of reach. "Before I give this to you," he said, "you need to understand something." He flicked his cigarette into the water, watching the ember hiss and die. "This ain't some Disney World boat ride. The Glades. They're old. Older than anything you learned in that fancy college of yours. And they got rules." He exhaled, looking out over the water like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "Break 'em and..." He trailed off. "And what?" I prompted. Marty's grey eyes cut back to mine. "Just don't break 'em." He handed me the paper. It was heavier than it should have been, like the ink had soaked in deep, like the weight of whatever was written there had settled into the fibres. I read Rules of the Everglades, Boat Tour Rule. 1. Do not leave the marked paths on the map. Even if the water looks calm, the deep places aren't meant for us, and what lives there doesn't take kindly to visitors. Rule 2. If a passenger asks about the old lost towns or ghost boats, tell them it's just a myth. Don't elaborate. Don't explain. Some stories shouldn't be encouraged. Rule 3. If you spot a man standing on the riverbank with no shadow, turn the boat around immediately. He doesn't belong here, and neither will you if you acknowledge him. Rule 4. At exactly 1:13 p.m., you must stop the boat and let it idle for 1 full minute. Something will pass beneath you. Do not disturb it. Don't look directly at it. Don't speak until it's gone. Rule 5. Do not allow any passenger to bring red flowers on board. If you find one, throw it overboard before the boat leaves the dock. They attract attention we don't want. Rule 6. If the birds fall silent, keep the engine running. Do not stop moving until the birds sing again. What makes them quiet is still listening. Rule 7. At dusk, a woman with wet hair may wave to you from the mangroves. Do not wave back. She's looking for someone. You don't want it to be you. Rule 8. If you hear splashing behind you but see nothing, don't turn around. It's just trying to trick you into looking. Keep your eyes forward and pray it loses interest. Rule 9. The tour ends at the same dock it begins. If the dock looks different when you return, you're not done yet. Keep going until you find the right one. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "This has to be some kind of joke," I said, though my voice didn't carry as much certainty as I'd hoped. Marty lit another cigarette. The flame from his lighter flickered strangely, twisting against the heavy air. "Everything's a joke," he said, "until it isn't." He jerked his head toward the boats. "Come on, I'll show you which one you'll be using." The paper sat heavy in my hands. I folded it carefully, slipped it into my pocket, and followed. The airboat was newer than the others, its metal gleaming under the brutal Florida sun. Marty ran me through the controls, throttle, steering, emergency procedures. It all seemed simple enough, though I couldn't help but notice the way he kept glancing at his watch, like he was trying to time something. "First tour's tomorrow morning," he said, checking his watch again. 8 a.m. sharp. "Small group. Better for learning the ropes." He hesitated, then jerked his chin toward a small trailer tucked back from the water, half hidden by palmetto bushes. "The housing we promised is that trailer over there." Previous guide left in a hurry. Everything should still work. I caught onto the phrasing immediately. Left in a hurry, but Marty was already walking away, waving over his shoulder. "Remember the rules, kid. Every single one of them." The trailer was basic but livable. Linoleum floors, a tiny kitchen, an even tinier bathroom. But something about it felt wrong. There were personal items still scattered around. A coffee mug in the sink, a jacket draped over a chair, a book lying face down on the bedside table, its spine cracked like someone had been mid-chapter. It looked as if whoever had lived here had just stepped out and expected to be back any minute, but they hadn't come back. I tried not to think about that as I lay in bed, the mattress springs squeaking beneath me. The sounds of the Everglades filled the night, frogs croaking in an endless hypnotic rhythm, the occasional rustle in the brush, a splash that seemed too close to ignore. Each time I started to drift off, I found myself reaching for the rule sheet on the bedside table. My fingers traced over the words, again and again, until the ink blurred, and the rules felt less like guidelines and more like prayers. Morning came too quickly. The Florida sun blasted through the thin curtains, its heat already thick and heavy in the air. I dressed quickly in the uniform Marty had left. Khaki shorts, a moisture-wicking polo with the tour company's logo, and a wide-brimmed hat. Professional, but practical. My first tour group arrived right on time. Bob and Linda Matthews, a retired couple from Ohio celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary. Bob wore cargo shorts and a fishing vest, while Linda clutched a bird-watching guide like it was the Bible. And then there was Mike Chen, a photography student from UCLA, working on his thesis about wetland wildlife. He barely spoke, mostly hidden behind his massive camera setup. But I noticed something. He wasn't just taking pictures of the birds. He kept framing shots of empty water, as if expecting something to appear. "Welcome to the Everglades," I began, trying to channel every nature documentary host I'd ever watched. "Before we begin, I need to go over some safety guidelines. The first hour was perfect." I pointed out birds, explained the ecosystem, talked about conservation efforts. Bob and Linda were the dream tourists, gasping in delight at every sighting, asking thoughtful questions about the mangroves. Mike was quieter, but I could feel his camera clicking constantly. Then it happened. The birds fell silent, not gradually. One moment, the air was alive with their calls. The next, nothing. The swamp went still, a deep, unnatural silence. I felt it press, down on my skin, thick and suffocating. Rule 6. If the birds fall silent, keep the engine running. Do not stop moving until the birds sing again. What makes them quiet is still listening. My hands tightened on the controls until my knuckles went white. I kept the boat moving, forcing my breath to stay steady, scanning the water without making it obvious. Then, a splash, soft, deliberate. Behind us, Linda tensed. What was that? My stomach curled in on itself. I forced a laugh that sounded wrong in my own ears. "Probably just a gator," I said quickly, my voice too light. "They love to follow boats. Best not to look. Wouldn't want to encourage them." The whooey, splashing, came again, closer. Mike raised his camera. "Don't!" I said sharply, gripping his wrist before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked up, surprised. "Fish are camera shy," I lied, my voice lower now. "You'll get better shots up ahead." For 5 agonizing minutes, we moved through the water with that thing following us. I never turned around. Even when the splashes came so close, they sounded like they were right beside the boat. Even when the water rippled in patterns that didn't make sense, shifting and reforming like something was just beneath the surface, reaching. Then, a bird called, then another, and the swamp exhaled. The sounds of the Everglades rushing back like they'd never left. I let out a slow breath, hands cramping from how tightly I'd been gripping the throttle. I checked my watch. 10 p.m. 3 minutes until Rule 4 kicked in. We were in a narrow channel now. Here's your rewritten story with enhanced realism, psychological suspense, character backstory, and engaging dialogue while maintaining the same word count. The mangroves arched overhead, their twisted roots plunging into the dark, water like skeletal fingers. A tunnel of tangled branches cast shifting shadows as we drifted forward. At exactly 13 miles in, I cut the engine. My heartbeat pounded so violently, I was sure the others could hear it. Taking a quick break, I announced, forcing my voice to stay even. Perfect time for photos. "Oh, Bob, look at that bird over there." Linda pointed at a snowy egret perched delicately on a branch. But I barely heard her. The water had gone unnaturally still. Too still. The surface, once rippled by the boat's wake, smoothed out like black glass. That's when I saw it. At first, just a shadow, a darker patch in the murky depths, but then it moved, slowly, deliberately. It slithered, the way a snake might, but it was far too massive. And it wasn't just a single shape. There were limbs, or tentacles, or something else. The shadow passed directly beneath us, and my breath, caught as a light scraping sound echoed from the hull. A touch, faint but deliberate. A shiver raced up my spine. Bob leaned over the edge, squinting. "Did you see that?" His voice was low, uneasy. "Looked like a big fish or something," I said, my tone even. "Manatee, probably." I nodded quickly. "Yeah, common in these parts." But we both knew it wasn't a manatee. Manatees didn't move like that, and they sure as hell didn't make the water feel colder just by passing through. A single minute stretched into eternity before I finally restarted the engine. As we moved on, I caught Mike frowning at his camera screen. Later, he told me none of his shots from that exact moment came out. Just black frames. Blank. As if the camera had been switched off. The tour continued, and I forced myself to relax. We spotted alligators sunning themselves on half-submerged logs, herons stalking through the shallows, and even a real manatee lazily drifting beneath the surface. The Matthews were thrilled, snapping photos and sharing stories about their grandkids back in Ohio. Then Linda asked the question I'd been dreading. "Is it true what they say about the lost towns?" She flipped through her guidebook. I read something about whole communities that just disappeared out here. Rule number 2 kicked in immediately. If a passenger asks about the old ghost towns or the missing boats, say it's just a myth. Don't elaborate. Don't explain. Some stories shouldn't be encouraged. I kept my voice light. Just local legends. You know how these places are. People love their ghost stories. But Linda wasn't done. But in 1973, I cut her off. "Look, an osprey." I pointed at the most ordinary bird I could find. Rare sight this time of year. The distraction worked. Mostly. But as I turned us down another bend in the river, my gut twisted. A figure stood on the bank, half hidden, in the sawgrass. A man. He wore an old-fashioned suit, complete with a fedora. At first glance, he seemed normal, until I noticed what was wrong. The sun was directly overhead, but he cast no shadow. Rule number 3. If you see a man on the riverbank with no shadow, turn the boat around immediately. He doesn't belong here, and neither will you if you acknowledge him. I spun the wheel hard, sending a spray of water outward. Mike steadied his camera. "Everything okay?" "Just took a wrong turn," I said, forcing a laugh. "These channels all look the same sometimes." As we veered away, I risked one last glance. The man had turned too, watching us. And though his face was obscured by the shadow of his hat, I knew, somehow, I knew he was smiling. The sun dipped lower as we neared the dock, its golden light stretching long, natural shadows across the water. Natural shadows. That's when Mike called out, "Hey, look over there!" I followed his gaze. A woman, half submerged in the water. Her long black hair clung to her face in wet strands, her pale skin ghostly against the dark current. One arm slowly lifted in a gentle wave. Her expression was eerily calm. Rule number 4. If you see a woman in the water at dusk, do not wave back. She's looking for someone, and you don't want it to be you. "Oh my God," Linda gasped. "She might be stranded. Should we help her?" I forced a casual tone. "Just a local, probably waiting for someone." But my hands tightened on the wheel. "Out here? Alone?" Linda's voice wavered. "We should at least call—" "No need," I said too quickly. I pushed the throttle forward. We passed her. The boat rocked slightly with the shift in current. I told myself not to look. Don't acknowledge her. Don't let her see you noticing her. But I had already failed. Mike snapped a picture, then cursed under his breath. "What the hell?" "What?" "It's just black," he muttered, scrolling through his camera. Just like before. My fingers trembled as I guided us toward the dock. Almost there. The second we touched wood, I killed the engine and leapt onto solid ground, my legs unsteady. The Matthews climbed out, still laughing about what a great tour it had been. They promised glowing reviews. I nodded, forcing a smile, but my mind was elsewhere, scanning the water, watching the mangroves. Then I saw it, far down the river, a figure, standing at the edge of the trees, the same fedora, the same stillness. Watching, waiting, I turned away. Rule number 5. If you make it back to the dock, don't look back, whatever you saw, whatever followed you, whatever noticed you. It's better if you pretend you never saw it at all. Here's your rewritten version, enhancing realism, psychological suspense, and character depth while maintaining the same word count. Speed up. "A lot of people swim out here in the mangroves," Mike asked skeptically. "With the alligators?" I didn't answer, just kept the boat moving. I could feel her eyes on us until we rounded the bend. No one spoke for the rest of the trip. Finally, the dock came into view, exactly as we'd left it. Normal. Safe. The word "oop" still visible on the weathered sign. The same loose board still creaking underfoot. I helped my passengers off, accepted their generous tip. Guilt money, I realized later, for every time they thought I was making a mistake when I was actually following the rules, and watched them walk back to their cars. Marty materialized, beside me like a ghost, lighting another cigarette with steady hands that never seemed to shake. "You followed the rules," he said. "Not a question. Did I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, kid." He exhaled a slow cloud of smoke that hung too still in the humid air. "You just made the right ones today." That night, I couldn't sleep. The trailer felt too small, too vulnerable. I opened my laptop thinking maybe I could research the history of Oahu, find some rational explanation for what I'd seen. The internet crawled, but I managed to dig up plenty. Ecosystem data, conservation efforts, stories about the wildlife, but nothing about shadowless men in fedoras. Nothing about women waving from the mangroves. Nothing about things that made birds fall silent. Around midnight, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the trailer, a sound too deliberate, too heavy in the quiet night. I froze. The last guide had left in a hurry. I remembered that now. "Hello?" I called, not moving from my chair. No answer. Then another 3 knocks, louder this time. There were no rules about knocking, but every part of me knew opening that door would be a mistake. I stayed still, barely breathing. Then, footsteps, moving away. Wet footsteps. The sound of someone climbing out of water. In the morning, damp footprints led from the shore to my door. Then back again. They weren't human, and they weren't from any animal I'd ever seen. Marty was already at the dock when I arrived, looking like he hadn't moved since yesterday. Rough night? His tone suggested he already knew the answer. I swallowed. The last guide. I chose my words carefully. What happened to them? Marty lit a fresh cigarette. The flame from his lighter flickered oddly in the morning haze. Broke rule 9, he said. Got impatient. Saw what looked like our dock and decided close enough was good enough. He shrugged. Haven't seen them since. I exhaled slowly. And before them? Rule 3. I didn't need to ask. They waved at the man with no shadow. Thought he was just some lost tourist taking pictures. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And before that one? Marty gave me a long look. You really want to know? I didn't. But I asked anyway. Rule 7. His expression didn't change, but his voice was quieter now. Got sympathetic. Tried to help the woman in the mangroves. She'd been watching that guide for weeks, waving every sunset. One day, he flicked ash from his cigarette. They waved back. I felt a deep, marrow-deep kind of unease. The thing about her, Marty continued. She's patient. She'll wait until you forget to be afraid. Until you start thinking maybe the rules are just superstition. Until you wave back. A family of 4 approached the dock. The first tour of the day. They looked painfully normal in their matching Disney World t-shirts and sun hats, arguing about who would sit where. The father checked his phone, oblivious. The mother applied sunscreen to everyone. Marty's voice was calm. Ready for another tour? But his eyes said something else. Ready to follow the rules again. Ready to keep these people safe from things they don't even know exist. I thought about the shadow under the boat. The woman in the mangroves. The knocking at my door. I thought about my empty bank account. My student loans. I thought about the wet footprints. Yeah, I said. I'm ready, and I was. Because out here, the rules weren't just guidelines. They were the only things standing between us and whatever waits in the deep water, whatever waves from the mangroves, whatever walks without a shadow. The family approached. The kids bickered over seats. The father muttered about losing signal. Put on my tour guide's smile. Welcome to the Everglades, I said, the rules burning in my back pocket like a brand. Before we begin, I need to go over some safety guidelines. The rules are still there, folded in my wallet. Sometimes, late at night, I take them out, read them again, remind myself that they're real, that everything I saw was real. The paper feels older every time I touch it, but the ink never fades. And if you're ever in OP and you see a job listing for a boat tour that seems too good to be true, well, you know the rules now. Whether you follow them or not, that's up to you. Just remember, the Glades are watching, and they're very, very patient.